1, 2, 3, 4.
In this podcast, you will be here. Knights of Vader, Knights of Vader includes, but is not limited to, talk of Star Wars, not ray guns. We can't truly prepare for the jump that follows this song, but hey, we gave it a try. So here's the Knights of Vader. Crystal Fox report they are divided. Prequel, sequel, canon, love they fighted. I know that we are just musicians hired, and their time is up. So here's the Knights of Vader.
Impressive. Most impressive.
A big thank you to An Insperiority Complex for providing our theme song. It is May 21st, 2022. My name is Zach Weber, and I am joined by the Portius the Mortius almost on his way to celebration. I've lost count of how many there have been. Chris.
Hey, happy to be here to talk about the second coming of Ewan McDonald as Obi-Wan, and also a little bit about Celebration. I do think they stopped numbering them like 5 celebrations ago.
That was another Disney thing, right? Much like episodes on the sequel trilogy, we no longer like numbered our celebrations.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bigger thing where I think the last one that had the number in the branding was either 5 or 6, and it's just like 7 for anything just sounds weird. It's like movie sequels. Like the 7th one doesn't usually have the number in. It just sounds crazy.
So you're telling me they should have named the 7th celebration The Force Awakens?
You know, they were dodging the phrase episode 7 a little bit. They knew they had to have it in the crawl, but it wasn't on a lot of stuff.
I know. It's kind of amazing how Disney really like weirdly picks and chooses things that they think people will get hung up on. Like I said, we'll get into a lot. The fact that I think to this day, Disney and Lucasfilm, or at least the powers that be at Lucasfilm, still do not know how to effectively being the key word, manage the brand. There's a weird pinball effect, I think, that's still happening a decade later.
Yeah, I mean, as you alluded to, there's a lot of very interesting insights that you can get from this Kathleen Kennedy Vanity Fair interview that just came out a couple days ago.
Oh, yes. So, yes, folks, I know in a couple of days we will have the Kenobi TV series debuting. There will be an episode about that, obviously, in about a week or so. But like most major Star Wars projects that debut, there's some episode that's titled On the Eve of, insert contemporary thing here. And for that, it's not just simply speculation. We do have a meaty Vanity Fair article that I would say, Chris, is what? It's on par of like one of the like film releases. Like this felt like Force Awakens level, Last Jedi, Revenge of the Sith. It felt like that sort of magnitude behind it. Even though like I've read the article now 3 times, and every time I read it, it's not really telling us anything we didn't already either know or presume.
Yeah, I think the reason it sort of has that vibe is because, for like, I'll be the first to admit it. Like, they got me with that Annie Leibovitz Vanity Fair cover photo. Like, I don't know, it's pretty straightforward. It's 4 people standing in a line, but the style of it, the fact that it's sort of across a couple different timelines. I guess it's 3 different time periods the actors representing in that group of 4. That cover got me. That was crazy. And like I said, Andy Leibovitz did all those other somewhat famous Vanity Fair Star Wars covers. So it did really feel like the launch of a theatrical film. The photos are the highlight, aside from a few quotes from Kathleen Kennedy.
Oh, Kathleen Kennedy. I guess you're a big fan of the color blue, because almost every like that cover is like somebody just dipped it into like blue acrylic paint and then pulled it out. Like they like the color blue. Like I look at that, like I said, like to me that the Annie Leibovitz thing, like outside of it being a tradition, I find severely overrated. The Force Awakens one was fun because like it was the idea of Star Wars is back. The Last Jedi one just frustrated me because again, it was another one of those things of like it felt like them trying to elevate Star Wars in a way that's not supposed to be. Again, Star Wars, in the words of George Lucas, is a movie series for children. or at the very least for a bunch of like dweebs in their 20s. And again, it's a weird elevation of Star Wars that feels like they're not doing it because they want to present the material that way. It's the Ultron Luke Skywalker thing of we have to do this because tradition tells us we have to do it.
Okay, I agree with what you're saying, but like, she's like the photos are good. Like
Oh no,
the
no, I'm
photos
not.
are, yeah.
I'm not trying to take away from the photos. I mean that like when Lucas would do this with the prequels, it was meant to like it was Lucas's attempt to try to elevate Star Wars in the 90s, being like, no, this is like I am doing something. It's the Jimmy C thing. I am trying to elevate this pulpy film series to something. Because again, like Lucas didn't do anything like this in the 70s or 80s. He didn't. And then so like there's the other quote from what the DVD extras on the Phantom Menace where like he sees like Titanic breaking box office records and you can tell he is very very dejected. He's like this is impossible. Nothing's ever going to be Titanic. Nothing's ever going to be. And I feel like when he was doing all this with Vanity Fair, it was an attempt to be like trying not only say position Star Wars as prestige, but try to get Star Wars looked at under a lens that it really never was looked at before. And then when Lucasfilm with under Disney stewardship started doing it, it felt like we're not doing this for the reason like the faux elevation reasons that Lucas is doing it. It's just we have to do this because we've done it like, oh, it's part of the marketing template. Not to detract from the pictures. I'm not trying to take away from the photos or the quality of the photos.
You're right. Though usually the photos would be the only interesting thing about uh this sort of Vanity Fair presentation, and the content would be, extremely by the numbers. Sort of like this article is sort of like that. It's just I think the Kathleen Kennedy interview is an web exclusive. It's not even in the print version of the magazine, which I don't even know if that's out yet. But I just like I like the idea that they're sort of taking seriously like sort of onset photos and capturing some stuff for the story. I don't know. I don't mind the fact that they're trying to make it prestigious. What I don't like is I think with Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker there were like a bunch of alternate covers, and like when you have their when you gamify it and say, here's the light side and dark side cover, inevitably you have much more boring shots because they're like sort of formulaic, and it's like one character doing something and it's like themed. Like that Force Awakens one is pretty awesome. I like the episode 3 one is really great too. It's just they got everybody involved there. They got Lucas in there if I'm remembering correctly.
Mm-hmm.
It,
Mm-hmm.
that's more interesting. It captures the moment a little more than Kylo Ren doing some sort of dramatic pose in the desert by himself.
You're telling me you don't like oh god, I remember the last time the Vanity Fair Star Wars stuff was slightly controversial was what? It was like was it the Rise of Skywalker thing with I'm not Obi Luke Skywalker with like R2 on Octo? Everyone just like, "What?" Like everybody was just kind of like losing their mind about that cuz like it was like, "Wait, he's not a Force ghost." Like how now I remember even I think at the time I was just like, are they gonna do like a Jesus Christ resurrection thing with Luke Skywalker? Is that gonna be like the MacGuffin of resurrecting Luke? Like I don't know, like usually there's at least one weirdly like non sequitur photo, whether it be that or the Obi-Wan and Darth Maul leaping in the desert, like dual shot that like is something that never happened. It was just basically a promotional still. Um, it's weird, like to think that there's really, like you said, the photos are maybe the least interesting thing about all this.
I would say the article is less interesting than the photos, save the Kathleen Kennedy interview. But
Well, I mean, though, is that like the photos? There's nothing to look. There's nothing to gawk at the photos. There's nothing to be like, oh wow. There is
yeah,
no awe in any of the photos.
it's a little calculated these days.
A little, a
They're
little.
it's it's a lot of them are like
Thank
there's
you.
not a whole lot of candid looking stuff. That there's this sort of this landscape shot of Cowboy Hat Man, Deborah Chow, Favre Lorian, and Kathleen Kennedy in front of like projection of the Slave One, which is it's just that at least. So it's like Favreau and Kathleen Kennedy are like they're just doing the blue steel. Deborah Chow is looking off into space, and Cowboy Hat Man is like laughing, looking right at the camera. So it's like at least one of them is a normal human being in this shot. You know what I mean? It's just a very strange shot because they're all doing sort of different stuff. Like I would prefer if it was like one of them like doing their job.
Well, exactly. And I think, again, that's another level of just kind of being indicative of just Lucasfilm and how they do things. Nothing is natural, nothing is organic. Everything is staged and organic. Like, it's everything has to be there to make it look good. And that's the thing where it's like, do they not realize that, like, any sort of creative endeavor is messy? Like, to make an omelet, you have to break a few eggs? Like, are they incapable of that? Or is this just, again, Disney that, like, you wouldn't mind, like, I get it, Disney, everything's supposed to be squeaky clean. But like, this is the same company that, oh God, within a couple of years of when Michael Eisner was ousted as CEO, there was books being written explaining all this, and everybody involved, which at the time was only in their positions of power for a couple of years, were all commenting on the record about what happened. So I don't know what happened to Disney in the last, I'd say, decade plus, where they feel everything now has to be kind of hidden behind like the Iron Curtain. Like there's stories about like after Mars Needs Moms came out, where like with Zemeckis and all the things that went wrong with that, and it's like you don't get that anymore. Like there's no more exposés explaining what happened. Everything is just simply like, this is a perfect venture. Nothing went wrong. Everything went according to plan, and there were never any issues. And it's like,
Well, there's been a few notable exceptions to them presenting things that way, like the director in the Jedi thing. Like they were pretty honest about the fact that, I mean, they had no choice at that point. Everyone knew that Mark Hamill wasn't exactly feeling it for some of that. So I guess it seemed somewhat healthy that they talked about it, and I think talking about things like not going squeaky clean, as you say. Kathleen Kennedy's comments about Solo in this interview is by far the most interesting thing to me.
well, yeah, like it confirms kind of everything we feared. And that's the thing. Like, if the highlight of an interview by the person who is the lead of the company that is in charge of the stewardship of one of the most beloved film franchises of all time, and she confirms that a CGI Ultron face main character is infinitely better than an actor making creative choices and collaborating with their fellow filmmakers and stuff. And that's just like as an artist, it should be abhorrent. Like, in all honesty, if she had a creative bone in her body, she should forget about even saying it. She wouldn't even think something like that. She should say that we take it on like a basis by basis level.
The irony of this comment coming out within a week of the Kenobi show, it cannot be understated. It's the most successful recasting of a legacy character like ever. That, you know what I mean? It's just it is it's, if people didn't accept this, like, obviously I'm not, like, plenty of people have pointed this out, but like Ewan McDonald is a recasted legacy character. It doesn't matter that it's been 20 years. Like, the original version of that character is very iconic and not something that people forget. It's not a thing that's outside of the cultural zeitgeist. Like, Alec Guinness Obi-Wan is like still something that is pretty relevant for whatever reason. It's something people remember. So it's a weird thing to say. It's taking the wrong lesson away from Solo's failure. What I don't understand is it's so weird for her to say, if she's willing to say it was a mistake because we recast an iconic character, is saying that so much better than saying it was a mistake to put it out that close to The Last Jedi? Or like what makes that kind of an error okay versus what most people would believe is the actual reason it failed?
To this day, like, and I've been beating the drum on this for nearly 4 years, is that Solo bombed because they literally sandwiched it between Avengers Infinity War and Incredibles 2. Like, in Deadpool 2, the movie did not have any space to breathe.
So isn't that a less embarrassing admittance than saying our casting was completely wrong?
Um, if you're a human being, yes. If you're the head of a studio, part of one of the largest entertainment brands on the face of the earth, no, because it's much easier to throw Alden Ehrenreich under the bus than it is the head of marketing. and the head of the studio. It's much think about it. Alan Horn was the head of the studio. He's one of those people. I think he's more to blame for any of this than Kathleen Kennedy is, because he's somebody who was intending to retire after his Warner Brothers gig. Alan Horn being the person responsible for like the Harry Potter like thing of the early 2000s. And Bob Iger kind of dragged him out of retirement. So I think what happened was Alan Horn just wanted to get everything done. I think Bob Iger's thing was just, we can't make money if we don't have, if something's not coming out every 2 weeks. And I think Alan Horn, instead of pushing back, just told Bob Iger yes to everything. And of course, again, I don't think Kathleen Kennedy's the enemy here. I just think she has no way. She doesn't know how to push back. And on top of that, she does not understand what makes Star Wars popular to the people who have propelled it to being one of the most successful entertainment anythings of all time. I think she's probably very good at making creative executive decisions. So when somebody kind of like in the article, they mentioned a couple things where obviously Favreau wanted a Baby Yoda, and Cowboy Hat Man was like, absolutely not. This basically reigns on years upon years of just lore and the shroud of where Yoda came from. And I think it probably went to someone like her who found the balance there. I think she's probably a really good tiebreaker. Almost like was it King Solomon? That was the whole thing where like kind of weeding out the best of everybody. I think that's probably where her strengths lie. I don't think she's good going into a room with a board of executives, or a board of directors or the executives, and pushing back on their ideas. I don't think that's where it's at. Because again, the infamous story always being is that both her and JJ wanted The Force Awakens for a May 2016 release date. They begged and pled with Bob Iger saying, please give us more time to work on this. And his thing was, I wanted by May 2015. I gave you December. December, or I'll find somebody else who can do it for me. And that's what it was. Like, it was called like, okay, like I already gave you, what would that be, 7 months. You're not getting any more out of me. Because guess what? They couldn't give them May because that was Captain America. That was Civil War. We couldn't do that. We can't. And that's what it was. And it's the same thing with all this. Probably the only person that can probably push back on the machine is Jimmy C, who we've been waiting over a decade for Avatar 2 through 12. And I think that's the issue.
Well, speaking of Iger, that's another thing that makes this whole idea of the casting choice being the problem interesting, because I feel like in Iger's book, didn't he already sort of fall on the sword of, we did too many theatrical movies too fast, too close together? He already sort of blamed it on the proximity to the other movies.
He did. He did say that. You would think he took the hit from it, though. But for some reason, Lucasfilm, again, this is the same company, and that feels it has to just keep picking its scabs. Even in this article, there is a very specific line that I think about. We are on the verge. Of Kenobi, the TV series, being a more of a direct continuation of Revenge of the Sith than a prelude to A New Hope. And yet there is a line in this that says a underwhelming prequel series. And I'm like, we are nearly 20 years removed from the end of the prequels, and we still have to throw them under the bus.
But it's the same during the same week that that Ewan McGregor's out there saying it's so amazing that the people this movie was actually made for are now adults and they appreciate it, and it's got a whole different cultural context. It's almost like you couldn't have paired the two remarks like more diabolically to make them inconsequential together. It's crazy.
Well, I think that's the thing. I think Lucasfilm is a hive mind, but the problem is that it's a hive mind of probably 2 or 3 dozen people, and they all think the same. So there's really probably no diversity of thought in that sense. There's probably nobody sitting there looking at this from the outside and being like, giving it some level of self-reflection, being like enough of the rhetoric of just attacking ourselves. There's no reason why 4 years after Solo we should be bringing that up as a disappointment anymore.
It shouldn't be in the article about the 3 new shows that are coming out. Like, what are we even talking about Solo for? Literally, people would have forgot it existed if you didn't bring it up in this article. It's crazy.
And that's the thing. Lucasfilm makes so many peculiar decisions because clearly this article had to be vetted by them in Disney's PR division. So if there was anything in this that they didn't find flattering, they could have very easily done like the little black sharpie and it out. They chose not to. So clearly they want that in there. They want that being part of the record.
Yeah.
It goes back to the comment Kathleen Kennedy made years ago about like the EU. Like she's like, I wish we had lore to pull from. And everybody kind of looked around the room and said, yeah, it's a shame Star Wars has no lore. I think it's either being taken, also to be fair to her, we also don't know the context of that. Like we're not privy to these interviews. We don't know what happened right before them or anything that happened prior. So who knows? Maybe it's taken out of context because it knows it'll get a rise out of people. But at the same time, though, like I said, if they didn't find it flattering or they felt it was something that wasn't their intent, they could very easily request to be taken out, and they're choosing not to.
Yeah, that's the thing. To the idea that they wouldn't have some content control over this article is ridiculous. So,
well, here's my question. Here's my question to you, Chris. After reading this article, looking at the pictures, are you any more excited about any of this? Like, I read this and I literally feel the exact same way before I read it. I'm like, okay, like there's stuff on the horizon. It's all TV based. We are not going to get a Star Wars movie for at least 3 to 5 years. Again, much like what I said in the post-mortem of The Rise of Skywalker, I sat there, warned everybody in January 2020. I said, we're not getting movies for a very long time. Rise of Skywalker didn't make the money it needed to make, and Star Wars has been written off. And this pretty much is the entire thesis of this article is Star Wars is it's practically the title of the article. It's Star Wars is a television thing now. You are not getting movies probably for, again, like at the absolute earliest, what, 2027?
you know what though, like this is okay with this would be more okay with me if the book of Boba Fett wasn't just such a strange quagmire. Like I'd be like, because s- before this, the filler episodes of the Mandalorian were like, that's the worst case scenario for a Star Wars TV show. So like the floor has lowered since then in terms of what they will accept as like
Well,
a Star Wars TV show.
Well, this is what I want to ask you, and this is something that, like, again, ever since the Rise of Skywalker leaks, I really never want to talk about leaks on this podcast ever again. But I'm going to keep it very, very abstract and vague. Um, uh, there's been 2 reputable like leak sites that have it looks legit based on everything I've read. Other things like other leaks, it seems to corroborate itself. Maybe that's just all coming from the same source. But if what I'm seeing is true, this series doesn't do anything to enhance anything. Like it doesn't. I don't want to say, because the whole time, like I think about what does one want from the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, and in the last couple of weeks, in preparation for this show, I read the novel that came out right after Revenge of the Sith called Dark Lord of the Sith. It's a famous Legends novel now. Not hard to come by, and I wanted to read that to see what they're going to be pulling from, because for the last couple months I've been kind of going into cynical mode when it comes to this series, being like, what's much like Rogue One, the entire plot of Rogue One is one sentence from the crawl. I'm like, what sort of things that seem vague or peculiar in Star Wars between Obi-Wan and Vader and A New Hope, Empire, and Jedi can be extrapolated into the show to be 2 hours of entertainment out of 6 hours. And there's a moment at the very end of Dark Lord of the Sith where I'm not sure. Did you ever read that novel, Chris? I imagine you did at some point.
I have not actually.
Oh, really? Okay. So this is not much of a spoiler. You could surmise this. The final chapter of that novel is Obi-Wan in a cantina on Tatooine, and he finds out that Darth Vader survived. And it's basically, I think it's like 10 to 12 pages of Obi-Wan having this internal conflict about, oh God, what have I done? What have I done? Look, it's the Vader line from Jedi of, now Obi-Wan's failure is complete. It's the thing of Obi-Wan realizing just, oh God, like I doomed the galaxy. And it's 12 pages and it's very potent because it's 12 pages.
When you say what would I like to get out of it, in an emotional sense, I like the idea of the Obi-Wan we see at the end of Revenge of the Sith is not is like sort of personality wise not the Obi-Wan we get in A New Hope, and it's like, show me like what happened, like, because I feel like right after Revenge of the Sith there should be, he should still have some sort of more like active agenda, and something should happen where he just drops that because it's either not safe or not, he just loses that momentum. And I think that would have, it makes sense that that's sort of I know this series is chronologically sort of right in the middle of the two movies, but I feel like that's what we're going to get. But I feel like it would have made more sense if it happened closer to episode 3 chronologically. But
Yeah, I
then
agree.
the literal side of me kicks in, and I think back on Alec Guinness's performance, and there's a real lack of urgency, sort of with his interactions with Luke, that it's sort of, you didn't have the full story back then. Even Lucas didn't have the full story back then. So on some level, when Obi-Wan's talking about going to Alderaan, he's not, it's not life or death whether or not Luke comes along. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, when you see this interaction with Owen and Kenobi in the trailer, and he's like, and when he gets the right age, he must be trained. It's like when you see Alec Guinness, it's like, well, I'm gonna go to Alderaan with or without you, but you should probably come. You know what I mean? So it's, I don't know if it's gonna sync up that well.
Well, yes, because I agree with you. Like, no, this series would make a lot more sense if it was, I'd say, the first 3 years of his exile. Not a decade, but obviously that being done because just of the age that Ewan McDonald is in real life. I think they want to lean into that.
Can you imagine if it was like 3 years after, but he's aged 20 years, but like it's Tatooine, so they just go with it.
It'd be fun. Um, I know what you're saying, but like even how you're describing it, I can rationalize it because I think this is kind of the brilliance of Star Wars is that like you can fill in all the corners, but that ruins the fun of it. Like as you were describing that, I could very easily say like Obi-Wan at this point in his life has done what when Alec Guinness was filming this had no idea of any sort of the oh geez, what would you even call it? Lore momentum behind it, inertia.
But on some level it's there. On some level he knew Anakin, and they were, they were good friends. They had some battles together in the Clone Wars. Like that much is in the script.
Well, yeah, and I think again, this is the brilliance of when Lucas was writing that dialogue, or if it was any one of his buddies like De Palma or whatever. It was a notion of it was kept vague, not with the intention of a spinoff, but because it was kind of like, well, we kind of don't know what any of this is. So, like, wouldn't it be fun to kind of leave this giant, again, like Winchester Mansion almost? Let's build this door here and just see what happens. Like in the sense of like, let's just build a door here. Doesn't matter that there's nothing behind it. There could be. It could be a brick wall. It doesn't matter because it's meant to kind of just be this idea of anything is possible. It's the sandbox philosophy. And I think but just real quick, getting back to like again, like what we want from this. So just recap real quick the Dark Lord of the Sith novel. It's basically half the book is from Vader's perspective and him and all his frustrations about the suit and what Palpatine has done to him and all that. And the other half is from basically one Jedi that we never new to the novel. And the whole thing with this Jedi is that he's somebody who's very disillusioned with the Jedi Order, like loyal to it, but just kind of like, what do you want to call it? Like somebody who lost his faith, as in like he's doing it though, but like he lost 2 Padawans during the Clone Wars. Kind of like what does this mean anymore? And over the course of the novel, like at some point, like about 3/4 of the way through, he sits there, abandons the other surviving Jedi to go do his own thing. And then during the 3rd act, he shows up to save the day and confront Vader. And he finds his inner peace. He finds that deeper spirituality, which is the true core of the Jedi Order. And it's potent because there is a sacrifice at the end of the book by this character. And it makes sense because this character comes to realize that Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader. And basically it's one of those things of, again, look what you've become. It's like I might be dying now, but it's better to die a hero than live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And it's really potent. And this is where the leaks come in, where I'm reading the leaks, and the leaks just like nothing happens in this series. It pretty much like, and I get it, like they obviously can't step on A New Hope's toes at all, but nothing happens. Like like I think I was looking at the subreddit this morning for this, and everybody's losing their minds over it, proclaiming it the next best thing since Rogue One, even though they haven't seen it, which always tickles me when we proclaim something is the next greatest thing, and we haven't even consumed even a fraction of it. I think people are going to be outside of the Scene 38 reimagined moments. I think people are going to be severely disappointed by this. Like, not Last Jedi, where it, quote unquote, ruined my childhood. But it looks like something derivative of the Book of Boba Fett, where it's like, oh yeah, like Boba Fett. Like, think about it. We had our tease for a whole year, like Boba Fett shoots fat Bib Fortuna, which is kind of great. Like, now it kind of doesn't mean much, but the idea of Boba Fett walking into Jabba's palace and it's a fat Bib Fortuna just doing like kind of like the gangster thing of, oh no, Boba, I didn't know you. Oh, we were trying to look for you. And he gets shot and just like his fat corpse gets knocked off the side as Boba sits on the throne. Like, that's a cute visual. That's like, you put that on a poster, in a movie lobby, any Star Wars fan will sit there, slap their $20 down, say sold. Then we watch it, and it's just him sitting in a bathtub for like 2 hours, and it's like learning from the Tusken Raiders, and it's like, oh God, like not that it's bad, it's just underwhelming, and that's the thing. Like, is anybody doing the Book of Boba Fett reduxes? Like, is anybody going back? Is anybody like chomping at the bit to rewatch that series?
I may never watch it again. I think the reason I think this is going to feel different, whether or not anything substantive happens, is just because I feel like with as much as people are loath to admit it, like Boba Fett was never much of a character, so it's not incredibly harmful to have him sit in a bathtub for 2.5 hours, because it's just like he didn't have much to offer to begin with. So it's either like you're gonna either have the phenomena of like when you see Vader in Rogue One, he doesn't really do anything or contribute to the story. He's just it's just they handled him very sparingly. And I mean, it works. I don't feel like nothing. Like, I know some people, the director Krennic scene really bothers them. I never felt that way watching it. So I think that as long as they keep it tasteful and don't have, I mean, he's going to be in a bathtub, but it's going to be a vertical bathtub at least. But as long as they sort of keep it like relatively tasteful, and like, I know not much can happen. And like I was saying before, like if a whole ton of emphasis gets put on him watching Luke, like well above and beyond like the level of importance it's given in episode 3, it will make watching A New Hope after this seem even more confusing, because that momentum of stewardship over Luke is pretty much gone by that point. Like he's
well, that's the thing about this show, is that like I in the article they make like in the Vanity Fair article, to kind of like pinball back to that for a second, there's like what, at least 2 paragraphs they're devoted to the idea of like, oh, should we put Vader in the show? Should we not? And it's like, how's this going to affect like Star Wars lore? And they're like, well, we had to put Vader in. And I from their perspective, from their point of view, I agree with that. If you're going to do an Obi-Wan show and you've already killed off Darth Maul, there's really only one other villain to go with. And I get putting Vader in there because there's a lot of stuff, like I said, from the original trilogy that you can mine. Like Chris, like I think you're going to eat this up, but we all know there's going to be a moment in this show, like you can put it in the bank, where how Obi-Wan evades Vader's striking blow, kill shot, whatever you want to call it, is because he's going to fake Vader out by disappearing. And it's going to explain as to why Vader steps on the cape on the Death Star. There's going to be a moment in this, I can guarantee you right now, where Obi-Wan's going to escape, and the thing's going to be, oh, if only Vader had stepped on the cape, then he would have known that Obi-Wan was alive. There's going to be that moment. It's going to be in the movie, and it's going to be there to completely recontextualize that moment from A New Hope. There's another moment in Return of the Jedi when Vader and Luke are on Endor after Luke surrenders himself, and Vader turns around to Luke after Luke says, "Come back to the light." And Vader goes, "Obi-Wan once thought as you did." And it's like, well, there you go. There's going to be a moment. And it's going to be, and weirdly, again, Chris, you obviously played the Revenge of the Sith video game in 2005.
Absolutely.
I advise everybody to go look at some of the cutscenes from that game. Not the actual footage of the movie that was interspliced into the cutscenes. But there is some really, considering obviously video games go into development pretty much the same time that like pre-production's happening. There is some really interesting like dialogue exchanges between Vader and Obi-Wan in the game when they're like obviously video game characters, which makes me think that Lucasfilm might have looked at that as well. I'll try to insert the clip if I can find it.
Anakin, please, come back to the light. Face up to what you've done. I can help you.
It's too late for that. You're too late. You only want to help yourself.
You know that's not true. I only wanted what was best for you, Anakin. I wasn't prepared to train someone like you.
That's your failing, not mine.
Perhaps I did fail you, but I won't abandon you to the dark side.
There's a lot of stuff, like, we get a little bit of it in Revenge of the Sith, where it's like, I failed you, Anakin, I failed you. And it's very concise, but it's really kind of expanded upon. And I'm like, there you go. There's your in. You're going to be seeing this. I think it's going to be a lot of just explaining where things came from. I think they realize that Star Wars needs a rebound shot. Not everything can be a Skywalker in a hallway mowing down enemies. And I think this is going to be their angle.
There was another Lucasfilm piece of entertainment that was a recasted character doing a whole lot of explaining where things came from in A New Hope, and it was called Solo. And it's just like, it's just weird to hear you phrase it that way, because like it was literally, Solo was like a checklist of like everything Han Solo has in A New Hope. Here's how he got it. And it's weird to sort of imagine them going through Kenobi and handling it the same way, whereas their core idea should really be some sort of meaningful narrative arc.
But I think we've laid it out, though. They don't blame that sort of checklist filmmaking as to why Solo bombed. They blame Alden Ehrenreich for why Solo bombed. Like, that's the thing. They're not looking at this in any sort of objective matter. Like, when Solo bombed, do you really think they sat around the boardroom and said, why do you think this didn't connect? They didn't do that. They automatically found the easiest thing. It was Alden Ehrenreich does not equal Harrison Ford. And I said, there you go. And think about what careers Alden Ehrenreich had. Like, I was afraid before that movie came out that the fandom was going to make him into Hayden Christensen, like 2.0. And the fandom didn't even go after him. Like, even the hate mongers on YouTube, they didn't even go. I think about it. Solo was at a point in Star Wars fandom where even the hate mob kind of shrugged at Alden Ehrenreich.
I think that movie had like too many other targets, like the director switch, and like there was just too many distractions. I mean, and obviously the real problem with it is, just you can watch it and you finish watching it and you still feel absolutely nothing about it, and that's the real problem with it. But it's not, it's for me, it's not the release date, it's not the casting, it's just that its substance is non-existent in terms of like anything interesting or important happening to, like, but and I feel like what you're describing is, I'm gonna get a similar experience with Obi-Wan. I hope not. I hope the core story is something interesting.
Well, no, like, the thing that's the saving grace to this, in which it will elevate itself beyond Solo, Book of Boba Fett, is that you have the Ewan McDonald element. Like, his presence elevates all of this. Even if it's kind of like, even if it ends up being crap, him being in it's gonna give it like a +5. It's a curve it's gonna be graded on, even if it's unintentional. And that's what it is. Like, don't be wrong, like people are gonna get there again. Talk about learning the worst lessons from Disney era Star Wars. Like, look at it. Like, think of Chris. If you had named the top 3 most ubiquitous, like fan favorite things from Disney era Star Wars, what would it be? It's Vader Rogue One hallway, Luke Skywalker hallway Mandalorian, and what would even be the third at this point?
2 or 3 other things from The Mandalorian. I don't know.
Probably like again, like I would again. It's the idea of what the Razor Crest, just the ship itself, and maybe Chewie were home from the Force Awakens.
Maybe the duel with the Praetorian Guards for for another bunch of people who completely are missing the point.
Well, yeah, like I said, I don't even think that's. I think that's if you're really like I don't even think that's ubiquitous. I think a lot of people will just throw that movie out entirely. Um, I don't even think anybody looks. I think the people who hate that movie refuse to look at it. Their hate has blinded them. But that's the thing, though, is that it's that notion of I think Lucasfilm again. It's what Lucas did with the Attack of the Clones. Like weirdly enough, like we were supposed to do a 20th anniversary episode for Attack of the Clones. It might not debut on the Knights of Vader feed. It'd probably be on the Cinemoddities feed. But the thing is that, like, and Chris, you can definitely remember this, is that, like, when Attack of the Clones came out, it was Lucas leaning into a lot of the criticisms.
Yeah, it's like Jar Jar is like the original, like like the original version of sort of doubling down. Like, he cut back on his presence in the movie. I'm not sure I believe that voting the Supreme Chancellor emergency powers was Jar Jar until Jar Jar had a negative reaction from people. Do you you know what I mean? Like, do you
Yeah.
like I think that would have played out differently. It's too perfect.
I don't know, like Lucas. That's why it feels coordinated. Um, I that is very much its own bag of worms, Chris. But oh god, Dello Felgates.
Yeah. I mean, it's literally like from the mind of a troll. You know what I mean? Like it's just like, what if Jar Jar was the cause of the whole empire? And whereas and I mean but whereas now when the audience hates a character, they have a scene where Leia says, "I gotta go over here for the whole movie, so I'll be seeing you later." so and one is remembered more fondly than the other. Although I have been, because of the 20th anniversary, a lot of this sort of fan media has been producing Attack of the Clones content, and it's still it is still probably the most polarizing of the prequels, and I'm noticing that and it's certainly not everyone who's come around on it.
No, like it's definitely in a better spot than it was 10 years ago. It definitely has improved. The fact that we're getting merchandise with it clearly means that
we're getting a lot more episode 2 merchandise than we are for Kenobi, that's for sure.
I guess Lucasfilm can plan that. I guess they have a calendar somewhere in Rhode Island, so they're able to coordinate those sort of things.
Do you see? Well, not even that. Like, do you see Hot Toys has 5 figures coming out for Attack of the Clones 20th anniversary, and one is it's like the episode 2 version of R2 and 3PO, and there's also a battle droid, and the 3PO comes with also the battle droid head, and the battle droid also comes with the 3PO head, and the R2 comes with the 3PO head, so he can drag it along behind him. It's crazy.
Oh no, it's cool.
Yeah, it's cool, but it's like that's so episode 2 to be like, the scene that most people hate from this movie, like that's where we're gonna make like $300 figures for.
This is such a drag, Chris. This is such a drag.
It's just something amazing about that.
Well, again, but I think that's the thing that, like, it's weird that, like, you have all these people opining about the current state of Star Wars, and yet, like, is there any mainstream Star Wars project that 15 years after it debuts is hated to its core? Is there any mainstream Star Wars project that 15 years after it's debuted is despised? Chris is thinking for the audience at home.
Yeah, like nothing's coming to mind that it's like what is remembered as being a complete disaster. That's 15 years old. I can't think of anything.
And I think that's the thing about Star Wars, and just not Star Wars, just media in general. Time heals all wounds. But like I can still remember back in like 2014 listening to some like I don't want to call it prestige, but like a like movie podcast with two like professional film critics that were well respected. One of them was very well respected during film Twitter at the heights of it. And they did an episode where they were I don't want to say comparing and contrasting. It was just kind of like deciding the merits in a very analytical, scholarly manner of A New Hope versus Empire, and which one was the better film. And like it was before The Force Awakens came out. And they were talking about the prequels, and keep in mind, this is like 2014. So you're 9 years from Revenge of the Sith and about 15 years away, 15 years removed from The Phantom Menace. And the big thing was this person who was very, very snobby about the prequels said, strangely enough, The Phantom Menace is the best one of the three. And this is the thing where I'm like, 15 years later, The Phantom Menace that, like, I don't, again, you remember, in 2005, Revenge of the Sith was always the definitive prequel film. Even if you did not like the prequels, it was always episode 1 and 2 are bad, but episode 3 is okay. And we were getting to a point 15 years later where The Phantom Menace was like, yeah, it's solid. And then now 20 years later to Attack of the Clones, it's, yeah, these are all kind of good, if not great films in their own right. And it makes you wonder that, like, where are we going to be in 2030, in like 2035? When, think about the generation that grew up with the sequel trilogy has their buying power. Like, the only reason why we're getting not $1,000 in Hot Toys figures for Attack of the Clones is that the kids that were 6 to 18 during that time frame now have the money to buy that stuff.
I'm not convinced it's I'm not convinced it's that formulaic, to be honest. Not that where whatever was the thing when you were a kid, you just end up liking it when you're an adult and putting money into it. For example, look at something that's made by this machine that is 15 years old or thereabouts. Like I saw the first Iron Man movie in theaters. I don't know if I remember anything from it. It definitely didn't change my life. That's probably almost 15 years old. I have no idea.
Well, no, this is the thing now. I think there's a difference. I'm not saying it's formulaic. I'm not saying because you watched something in 2008, thus in 2023, you're going to be like, take my wallet. I'm not saying that. I think is that a lot of this stuff that, like, the people who enjoyed it and will have that grassroots nostalgia for it don't have the buying power to devote dollars to it. Like, Chris, like, if someone had told you in 2007 that they would be making in the ballpark of what, $4,000 of Attack of the Clones premium figures, you would have been laughed at. You would have been laughed at. And I think the thing is that the people who, like, again, Chris and I being from two different generations of Star Wars fans, like, anytime, again, the fact that they made any Attack of the Clones merchandise is coming out now, it's kind of great. The fact that they're like, think about it, the entire theme of this celebration is 20 years later, Attack of the Clones appreciation. I cannot fathom that happening if there was a celebration in 2012. That would never have happened, regardless of Disney's involvement. Lucas would never have done that. I think what happens is that I think just over time people start to appreciate things more. And that's why to this day, I will guarantee everybody that, like, The Last Jedi will be seen as the best of the sequel trilogy, which it's already starting to happen. You look at, like, Red Letter Media, a lot of these, like, hate monger channels for Star Wars, and even their rhetoric went from "this is trash" to "we didn't like it, but at least it tried." And that is a huge leap from where we were just, what, 4 years ago?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm not convinced that the sequel trilogy will have a lasting cultural impact of any kind. I think it's much more comparable to, like, the MCU movies where it's like just grind them out.
I still think Star Wars is special in the way. Think about it. Regardless of how we look at Disney making things, Marvel has always been a machine at least with the sequel trilogy, Disney waited 2 years between each one of these. I do think again, I can't speak for Mandalorian. I can't speak for any of that. Even Rise of Skywalker, I think the Rise of Skywalker is kind of doomed to share a cell with Attack of the Clones, and that being the most peculiar Disney film or a Star Wars film ever made. Just because it just does whatever it wants, for better or for worse. Um, Again, I think it will get there. I think, Christy, I think you're looking at this as like we are so. It's like working at the hot dog factory and being like, no one's ever going to like this. It includes everything from pork, beef, chicken, rat tail, rubber boot heel. No one's ever going to like this. And then you juxtapose that to the person who's sitting there having the time of their life during a 4th of July barbecue and sees a package of Hebrew Nationals, and for the rest of their life will always associate that with that memory.
No, I understand what you're saying. It's just that those people like eating the hot dog, having the time of their life, existed for the prequels and the original trilogy, and they're the reason why Darth Vader is an icon. It's not he's not an icon for the amazing character arc. He's an icon for the design and I am your father being quoted a million times. The hot dog munchers are the reason he's an icon. It's not because of the good movies, you know what I mean? Like I I don't think I don't think the glue is there for the back to the meat grinder references. I don't think there's enough horse hooves in the sequel trilogy to keep it together in the long term. But that remains to be seen, I guess. But I think there's something fun about the idea of Lucasfilm sort of partnering with a lot of these licensees to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Attack of the Clones, because especially when it comes to like Star Wars Celebration, this upcoming one in Anaheim was supposed to happen in 2020, which would have been the 40th anniversary of Empire Strikes Back. So instead, we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of Attack of the Clones. It's just an interesting contrast, because it was theoretically supposed to be the same event, and it was just delayed that long, and it makes you wonder, sort of like how much of this emphasis on Attack of the Clones would have happened if that. I guess they probably would have had an event this year anyways. Yeah. So it doesn't make a whole lot of difference in the end. But the way Hasbro sort of jumped on the Empire Strikes Back anniversary, it was a lot of repacks, but they had like, I don't know, like 10 or 12 like big carded Black Series figures with the like 40th anniversary logo on them. They put out like a giant Black Series snow speeder and all that. And the stuff they're doing now is like they're playing catch up on like Mandalorian season 2 figures and stuff. So it's just weird how, I guess, the repack stuff you can throw together quicker, but they're not doing as much for Attack of the Clones as they were.
Okay, because you brought up the H word, Hasbro. I have to ask, like, would you, if I would have told you in the fall of 2019 that and forget about the current state of the world, would you have believed that there'd be a faster fulfillment time on Hot Toys figures of new characters than Hasbro?
No, and I don't think it has to do with I don't think it has to do with like the time it takes to produce the figures or Lucasfilm like sharing character designs. I think it's literally something like, it's something more to do with paranoia about spoilers. I think it has more to do with that. I think Lucasfilm with Star Wars is just, for whatever reason, they've been incredibly pearl clutchy about that, like since the J.J. Abrams era. And I think maybe the sort of tone he set with the Force Awakens might have something to do with that. I don't know if it seems to have gotten worse than it even was then over time. And I because like I've heard interviews with people who, they were doing their digital sculpts of Mandalorian characters 18 months before we saw the show. So it's not that they couldn't have had everything out in time. It's just that they wanted to be incredibly safe with it. And I don't know how there's not a greater concern that they're not going to capitalize on sales while the property is relevant, because you know what's certainly not relevant anymore? The Book of Boba Fett. You know, when I would have bought stuff about that show before it came out, that's when I would have bought stuff about that show, and now I don't want any. So I don't, you know, they missed out on hundreds of dollars of my money that they could have had if they put out awesome stuff before the show.
Well, here's the question though. Okay, and this is a question I think I've wanted to ask you for a while, but we've never been able to get to it directly. What is your opinion on the fact that like Hasbro is going to no more bubble window packaging? Like what's going to happen to the vintage collection? What? How are I would imagine that like people will still buy it, but like I don't know about you, but like I don't buy Hasbro stuff anymore. Like I have, it's funny. A friend of the show, he's in the Knights of Air Facebook group. His name's Coleman. He is my like Star Wars. He's my equivalent. Like if I am Boba Fett, he is my Din Djarin. Him and I occasionally run in, like to each other in the wild, and we just kind of like, oh god, talk shop about Star Wars collecting. And maybe a month ago, him and I ran into each other. And him and I are like, he's like, so what are you looking for? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like what Hasbro thing you looking for? And I'm like, nothing. There is nothing that I am looking for right now. And there's a really quick anecdote was the Book of Boba Fett Black Series deluxe in quotation marks figure. Coleman living near me found one in his like at the Walmart where we kind of live by, and he's like, I got lucky. I found one like on the bicycle rack, like end cap. And while I was reading his like comment in the Facebook group, I was literally a minute's drive from the Walmart where I work, which is right across the river from where this was happening. So I go there, I have the UPC like barcode, and I asked them to scan it, and they're like, yeah, it says we have 6 of them. And I'm like, okay, like that's legit a whole case. I'm like, where is it? They're like, well, the shelf tag's there. And I'm like, yeah, but it's empty. And they're like, well, it says it's on the sales floor. I'm like, so wait, it's not in the back? No, it says it's on the sales floor. Okay. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, but you have 6 of them. Where are they then? I'm like, but it's a box. I'm like, and then like, I'm like, well, what do I do? Like, oh, come back tomorrow. Probably will be packed out overnight. Okay. Come back the following morning. They still had 6. It was on the sales floor. Cause I don't know how it could be packed out if it was so like, they had no idea where it was.
So essentially, an employee hid the whole case and hadn't
Yes.
even had the
Yes.
courtesy of checking out with it between the days you
Yes.
visited. It was still somewhere in the
Yes.
store that they had hidden it, basically.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the thing about though is that like, and I get it, like I remember this even back from my Rebel Scum days of like people complaining to Hasbro about how horrible Walmart is and Walmart just being the behemoth retailer that nobody picks a fight with. But it's just that I'm done. Like, and I've said this before. I told Coleman this. I'm like, instead of dropping, especially now that like all the figures now are roughly like give or take $30 US. Like I'd rather take that money instead of buying like 5 to 10 figures a year. Just buy one Hot Toys figure that I know will not have any blemishes, any like issues with it. No like opening up the package and having like a bent lightsaber or the paint apps are wrong on the face. Like it's like I'm done. I'm like they're like it's like occasionally maybe something might catch my eye and be like, oh, this is kind of neat. But even the other day I found this morning I found the Droids Boba Fett 3 3/4 figure, and I just said like I looked at it, and I'm like, nah, I'm good.
Oh man.
Well, I have we went through this. I have the 30th anniversary collection figure. So like I've
This is
scratched
better
that
than that.
itch.
This is better than that. And also, I thought you had already ordered the Droids one anyway. But
I
anyways,
did, but I canceled the order because like I was just kind of like I at this point I don't even know if this, like it might come in a bubble mailer, and I don't want to have to go to the store and return it and just fight with them over
Dude.
getting a replacement.
Dude, that one, as like I kind of agree with your general sentiments that like I'm over a lot of it. I'm not buying the Black Series anymore, but that Droids Boba Fett is awesome, and like I would have one even in a bubble mailer from Amazon wrecked because it's awesome loose. But it's just like it's better than that 30th anniversary one. Yeah, but just saying, it doesn't come with the fork gun. But anyway, I kind of get what you're saying. I've been getting a few of the vintage collection stuff. I'm definitely not complete on it because first of all, a lot of it's like reissues of like old stuff. I think I went to this this real big toy show called ICCCCon in Nashville. That was like around the start of the month, and there was a booth there that had like all the new vintage collection stuff, like the animated Clone Wars wave, just like, they had probably 10 of each out on pegs at like a $2 markup. So I got a few things. Like I got the reissue of the Ahsoka that goes for like $300. Like that looks better than the expensive version because it has like the face printing tech on it rather than whatever crayons they used to like do the faces back in the day, like terribly. And I mean, you contrast them and it's night and day. So it's, I get the odd one that looks cool, and I like for that Ahsoka, for example, like it's it's cool that they're reissuing the same card art, because like just the card art on that Ahsoka figure is certainly not something they would do today. It's like it's like they were doing these sort of weird photorealistic like CG paintings of the animated characters for those card backs, and like the Ahsoka one just really stands out because it's just like it does not look like her in any incarnation, but it's just like its own thing. So
Yeah.
yeah. So like some of that stuff is cool to me, but the Black Series, I'm sort of over it.
Well, some of it's so kind of hit or miss right now because like for every, oh god, like Book of Boba Fett deluxe Boba Fett figure in the Black Series, you do get like an anomaly. And a lot of it's them reissuing stuff they did 10 years ago that were all kind of like the last of wave syndrome, whether it be Shea Vizsla, the Old Republic Trooper, which I was able, I think Chris will love this. My infamous story in like 2011 or 12 when that figure was, or maybe even 13, when that figure was released, is again Last of Wave Syndrome, and it was like retailing for like $11.99. I went, I just paid $5 for these figures. I'm not paying $11.99. As soon as those went up live on shopdisney.com, I literally bought 6 of them for like $13 a piece. I'm just like, I am not missing out. Considering that's one of my favorite like designs of Star Wars, I'm just like, nope. I am building myself a little squad. I'm like, I don't care. It's gonna break my heart when I tear open the plastic. Might keep one in the packaging that maybe in 10 years I consider recoup my investment on spending roughly $100 on these. But it's like that's the sort of stuff. Like it's so rare to find anything that gets you excited anymore. Like it's so much frustration.
What's awesome about that Shea Vizsla is like I think the head is resculpted. It just
Mhm.
generally looks better. I think if the promo images they released end up being accurate, it has the expanded universe name on the card rather than just saying the video game, which they've been doing lately. Like there's some new Clone Trooper repaints that actually say Battlefront 2 on the card rather than like Star Wars and like a little gaming greats thing. So like they've been adding a lot more new titles to the little window on the vintage collection card. So it's just interesting to see the expanded universe name being used, even though it's a reissue of old packaging. It's like that's not a term they use anymore. Like it would be Legends, so you'd think it would just say something like that, or they would redesign it. So I
I,
I think it's cool that it's lazy on one level, but it's also I like seeing it coming out the way it was.
oh, okay. To kind of segue into just another conversation. At one point, did they stop using the Legends moniker and just kind of treat the expanded universe as it was 10 years ago? Like, think about it. 10 years ago, you had canon and you had the expanded universe, which was part of the story, but it could be overwritten anytime it needed to be. And how long until they just go back to that, where it's just kind of like the expanded universe is there? Like, if you want, like, it's not part of continuity, but like, it's there to kind of fill in the gaps if you want to sit there have it. Like I feel like we're gonna like not they're never gonna announce it like they did back in like what was it 2013, where they very clearly started just throwing books into the incinerator in the basement there in Lucasfilm. But like I feel like it's just gonna be like, especially now that they're re-releasing a lot of these books and how these books are being kind of even offered, like they're not just simply like, oh god, digital books on Amazon. Like these are books you can find at like Barnes and Noble and Target, a place that normies travel heavily, and nobody's losing their mind seeing a 3-book collection of the original Thrawn trilogy with like a disfigured Luke fighting a redheaded woman with a green lightsaber. Like nobody has like had like an aneurysm yet. So like,
Hey, so it's not. I think it's coming up soon because it's we've sort of had 10 years of canon novels now, and you're gonna get to the point where the the importance of preserving the narrative integrity of a novel that was ho-hum 10 years ago, that wasn't one of the ones people really glommed onto, is going to be superseded by a new author who wants to do something around that time period but change it up, because it's going to be a forgettable canon novel from 10 years ago. That's already totally forgotten. I don't think they're going to prioritize maintaining that over.
Like a certain Jedi Master's lightsaber that was incinerated on Coruscant.
But that was I think that was a
Right.
more recent comic. But anyways, they should have been talking to each other.
It's the idea that like Lucas, again, it's gonna be like what Lucas did. Like, this is great. That person in whoever it was, 2015, 2016, had their moment. They got paid. They got to do what they wanted. Now we're gonna let somebody else do what they want.
Right. But I think, but like, let's face it, reissues of Heir to the Empire are making more money than whatever the heck ancillary Force Awakens novels there were.
Thrawn Ascendancy, or
Not even that, like whatever, like
Resistance
what was like
Reborn, the prequel novel to The Rise of Skywalker.
that could be not real and I wouldn't know.
The best thing about that novel is that like it's meant to be the prequel novel to The Rise of Skywalker, and like nothing ties in. Like apparently General Rykeen is still alive, even though like he's 65 when Leia's like 20. And yet somehow by the events post Last Jedi, he is still alive.
Well, in I don't know, in Legends, like all humans live to like over 100. So
Oh,
I don't
really?
know. Yeah.
Okay.
Like Boba Fett like became Mandalore at like in his late 70s or something. I don't know. It's just
I don't know. Like, how old was
yeah.
General Rykeen during the Battle of Hoth? Does he have Tatooine syndrome, or is he actually that old?
Well, isn't there a thing where like the original trilogy actors in The Force Awakens are like canonically like 7 years younger than they are in real life? If you like compare I'm pretty sure like the episode 7 doesn't take place 1-to-1 years after Return of the Jedi to the real world. You know what I mean? I think it's supposed to be like a bit earlier than that. So
Why would okay, this goes back to, again, speaking of things that don't matter in canon anymore. It's the notion that like Ben Solo is born a year after the Battle of Endor, and so he's 29 by the events of The Force Awakens. And then like Poe Dameron was born during the Battle of Endor, like right after it, like literally the moment like it ends, and he's 30 during the Force. Like that was my understanding of it all. Like, it's supposed to be a hard 30 years post Return of the Jedi. That's my understanding. Not saying that's right. That was my understanding based on the other nerds on the internet.
right. Yeah, so that makes that makes sense. So it'd
But
be so
Chris,
it's a little off
you haven't
real
answered the
time.
question. How old is General Rykeen supposed to be during the Battle of Hoth?
My
Like,
my point was that he's
could be
not as old as
possibly
he looks.
okay. So he has Uncle Owen and Amberu syndrome, where he
Yeah, he could.
is 34 years old.
'Cause-
He just aged horribly.
Right, because sequel trilogy Harrison Ford is physically older than his character is.
Okay.
That's my point.
Okay,
All right.
fair enough.
So
Fair
it doesn't. So and also Bo-Katan. End of conversation.
enough. Is Bo-Katan like one of those things that's just like she's that might be the ultimate canon breaking thing, right?
Yeah, maybe she spent some time on the gene farms that Queel talks about. Maybe she's had some work done. Who knows?
Okay, real quick, this again, like this is just fun to like probe Chris's opinion, because as much as I do this with Zenger, Joe, whatever, it's the idea that it becomes kind of farcical after a while. And this goes back, and we were going to save this for the we will get to it, part 2 of the duels. Okay, is somebody who still had Chris, you will experience Galaxy's Edge during this trip.
Theoretically, I could have
Okay.
probably done more planning than I have, because
Okay.
so just and I'll let you continue a second. Honestly, so like basically, I'm doing some work for the collecting track at Celebration, which is like the stage that has all the panels about the collectibles. So I'm going to be there most of the time. So I haven't. There's been a lot of like planning to do with that, and sort of ancillary work I had to like organize. So I haven't really planned out how my week's going to go other than that. So we'll see what happens. But I'm going to try to get there.
Okay. So this is my question to you, and we've kind of mentioned this here and there, in that like the Galaxy's Edge takes place between episodes 8 and 9, correct?
That was in the original brochure that I read. Yes.
All right. And as we all know, it's a canon, like both Rise of the Resistance is the canon breaking attraction because it features Rey in her Last Jedi outfit, and it features Kylo Ren with the helmet unsmashed, and not including the red super glue that's on it. Which we all is both very huge fans of The Last Jedi here. Hardy har har. That is in Star Wars continuity impossible. For Rey to be in the Last Jedi like throne room costume, and for Kylo Ren's helmet to be unsmashed, correct?
Well, I mean, I that's one of those things where it's like the real reason, of course, is that they were working on a very different episode 9 at the time that may or may not have been relevant to the smashed helmet. But there's a lot of weird stuff. It's like they can't go in. I think part of it's because they have an animatronic Kylo Ren, and they have to have a helmet for that, probably, or it just wouldn't be have been. Maybe the robot Adam Driver looked way weirder than the other robots, so they're like, listen, I know the helmet's not supposed to be there. We can't put in a super glue helmet because it shows them make that in episode 9. So like they were stuck between a rock and a hard place, and they just had to assume that he has a closet of helmets.
That's fine. I have no problem with that. I get real world complications. Oh God, schedules, timetables. Like I can see that. We're human at the end of the day. This is the thing that I love about continuity in Star Wars, and how like it kind of doesn't matter. My favorite Star Wars thing of all time, the Galactic Star Cruiser, currently available for the low price of $6,000 for what would it be, 40 or 50-hour adventure. During the little like what would you call it, medieval times performance they put on in the lobby, it's again Kylo Ren without the super glue marks in the helmet. It's the Kylo Ren of The Force Awakens, and it's Last Jedi Rey throne room costume from the latter half of the film. And it was during the press previews for that thing, they interviewed like Lucasfilm story group people, and the story group said, and it's on the record, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have the tweet like framed and like hung up in my room somewhere. It says this interaction is canon. And I'm like, I look at that and I'm just like, why not just say no comment? like why not just say the Halcyon Star Cruiser has seen many battles? Like from a certain point, just say from a certain point of view. It's built into Star Wars lore.
Yeah, so it's like if you say something like rude to like Galaxy's Edge Chewbacca, is that canon? You know what I mean? Like, can we settle down about this a little bit? Like, yeah, I don't know. That's that thing's weird. I like we've covered before, like Galaxy's Edge does interest me. Like the Star Cruiser experience does not. It's a miss by like epic proportions in every way, shape, and form. But I'll try and get out to Galaxy's Edge. But yeah, as far as canon breaking things, that it's a pretty short list, I think, at the moment. But like we were talking about earlier, that's
it's getting bigger. It's getting bigger.
Yeah, it's gonna get bigger. But I just think it's like I said, it's gonna come down to the fact that they're gonna attach talent to properties that aren't gonna be interested in respecting all of those comics. And like, Yoda's lightsaber is a small issue. You have Taika Waititi doing the next theatrically released movie however many years from now it comes out. You hire somebody like that, they're gonna take the story. They're going to have some idea of where they want to take the story. That's not going to be reliant upon like 10 years of ancillary material. So I think, that's around the timeline where it's really going to go out the window, I think.
Or they could do the thing where they give somebody their own little, like, it's going to be, okay, to bring this back to Vanity Fair. Is this going to be like the Acolyte, where they're going to very much do it and carve out their own little time frame that is more or less untouched? Like, think about it. It's not hard to break canon.
That's what they should do. That's absolutely what they should do. But I think for like guys like Taika Waititi, like the urge to like use legacy characters is irresistible. I don't believe that. Like I don't know. Like there's something sort of like they I don't think they're going to be able to do that. I think that choice is like an edict from Lucasfilm. That's like it would be they would have to be it'd be a creative integrity thing to do, like because I promise you can make compelling stories without those legacy characters. The games have done it a bunch of times. It's just having the will to sort of make that call and stick to it for like 2 movies instead of just one, and then freaking out if people don't like it.
Chris, are you fixing all their problems in one statement? Maybe just not be reactive to anything that's not exactly how you've seen it, like in your mind.
I'm saying do stick to a plan for like 2 movies. That hasn't been done so far.
I don't know. I think Patty Jenkins is still in the trunk of a Tesla somewhere. They're like, Patty, we want you to sit there and do it, like prepare another like promo for Celebration 2022. And somewhere there's just like a Tesla dealership where there's like a loud like thumping every couple of minutes saying, "Woo!"
Yeah, I don't know what the deal with that was. Like, does that all come down to like Wonder Woman to getting like a ho hum reception, or like what?
Probably,
Like,
I wouldn't be surprised if Lucas, like much like Ryan Johnson, um, I wouldn't be surprised if Lucasfilm got cold feet. But think about, because this is the thing about like Ryan Johnson. This is a theory, and I think I've mentioned it a couple times, but it bears repeating because like much like where I work now, a lot like obviously I am the de facto Star Wars person, so people come up to me and just kind of like to be like, it's kind of like, oh god, somebody sees you wearing a sports jersey, and so like anytime like that team's in the news, they have to come up to you and let you know like, oh, I know about this thing as well. And I'm a good sport, so I humor them. And so like someone's like, yeah, like Ryan Johnson's thing's been backburnered, and I'm like, where have you been the last 5 years? Because that thing has been on ice for pretty much since the get-go. And 2, the article says that, but that part isn't quoted from any particular person. That's the author of the article saying backburnered. The only quote they have on file, and I'm not disagreeing, that is the reality of the situation, but pretty much the quote states that like, oh, Ryan Johnson's very busy with his own stuff. And how I've interpreted his involvement with Star Wars post Last Jedi is, I would imagine in 2017, like after The Force Awakens was like locked in, like on the shelf, he probably signed a first look deal with them. They probably did that. So like every single thing, like after Last Jedi, his next project was Knives Out. So probably what happens is that like after every single time he finishes a project, he probably has to go to Lucasfilm and say, hey, are we going to work on this next? And they probably tell him, give us a couple of weeks and we'll get back to you. And they probably give him an answer. And if it's no, he's allowed to go work on the next thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's what's happened to Patty Jenkins in Rogue One. I wouldn't be surprised that like when they say like, oh, this person's been hired to direct very specific movie, in Ryan Johnson's case, trilogy, I think it's probably something much more vague and open-ended. And I think that's probably what it was. They probably shouldn't have done a promo video as early as they did. But again, it's the same company that literally had a Josh Trank Boba Fett sizzle reel, and they basically canceled that the morning of them debuting that little like teaser trailer.
yeah, I mean, I can sort of, I don't know if this is like who the listeners of this podcast are, but like I really don't want people to get the wrong impression here. Like I am genuinely mostly not excited about new Star Wars material. Like, but but
Chris is like, if you're a Star Wars fan, I'm probably not on the same level of enthusiasm as you.
Yeah, but for example, like we're laughing about Hasbro stuff. Like, oh, what are they even doing? They have one figure for the Kenobi show coming out, and Ewan McGregor made fun of it on the reveal. He's like they 3D scanned me, and still it comes out looking like this. Can you believe it? And he thinks it looks terrible, and that's the reveal of the figure, the only figure for the show. But like I was saying, like I'm going to Celebration. I just went to a big convention. I'm going for the experience of like other aspects of the fandom. Like I hope the Kenobi show is great. I want it to be great. I'm not you know what I mean? Like I will be more happy if it's great. But I'm going for the sort of the community aspects of it. Like I have a ton of friends who like this stuff. A lot of them are collectors. They get into a lot of the older stuff. There's a lot of stuff that you can sort of experience at these events that are like outside of the current property of the day. For example, like like you were saying, what every new Hasbro figure is like $30 now, right? Here's something I got at that last show. This is like a Bomar Monk 3 3/4, and as much as the Book of Boba Fett tried to make them uncool, you can't really make uncool a robot spider with a brain in a jar. This came out in like the late 90s through the fan club. I got it like sealed in the mailer box for like $12.
Mhm.
It's like that's cooler than anything they're putting out right now. It just is. And you can find this stuff, and it's like if they released it's weird how we are as a fan culture, right? Like if Hasbro put that out right now, it would sell out.
Mhm.
If they change nothing, just reissue it in a new box. It's just the psychology of the fact that it's 25 years old. People, there's nothing wrong with the sculpt or anything, right? So it's just like like don't get me wrong when you sort of hear, like, I do sound cynical about a lot of this stuff, but like I really enjoy the franchise. Uh, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm going to Celebration. I'll probably go to Galaxy's Edge. It's just like I want them to do more with it. Sort of, as funny as this sounds, I want them to do more with it intellectually. And I doubt I'll get that from Kenobi, but I'm still sort of optimistic about it. I like the way they're presenting these new series. I hope that they all have really very little structurally to do with the Book of Boba Fett.
But this is my thing though as a Star Wars fan. Like I said, this is not meant to be a Debbie Downer. Like you said, Chris, I'm kind of gonna echo your sentiment here. Is it like think about it. There's only a finite amount of time of life, and we're spending time discussing our woes with something like this. Um, this is my concern though, and this is as a Star Wars fan. I got like we have a new Star Wars thing coming out in a week. I 10 years ago, I could not fathom that I'd be indifferent to it. Like I am like it's one of those things where like I'm gonna watch it. It's gonna be exciting those first couple minutes, like seeing like the Lucasfilm logo. It's gonna be you're gonna have that tingle of excitement, and it's gonna disappear immediately. Like it's because it's drawn out. Like it's the idea of just like this, and again, this maybe goes back to the hot dog factory scenario. But like I don't care, and maybe it's because I'm getting older. I don't have that doe-eyed expression. But it goes back even to things like Jedi Fallen Order. That like I still think about that game all the time. That like there's that certain thing of just like I don't think about the Book of Boba Fett. There's not a single moment in the Book of Boba Fett I would want to rewatch. Outside of Luke Skywalker Mandalorian season 2, there's not a single thing that I want to rewatch in the Mandalorian. And I don't know. Like it's weird to think of like Star Wars that way into like breaking it down to moments. But there isn't that sort of, I guess it's resonance. And that's the thing. Like as much as I deride certain aspects of Disney Star Wars, there are moments. As much as again, I think I'm one of the loudest Rise of Skywalker champions there are. There's even moments from that which I like am over the moon for. But the TV thing is taking, like I was always afraid as a Star Wars fan. At one point there was going to be a Knights of Vader episode called Solo, or how I learned to love the never-ending string of spin-off films. I was going to do an episode like that at some point. Because I was always afraid Disney was going to run Star Wars into the ground by making like doing the Marvel thing, like we mentioned, 1 movie a year, 2 movies a year, 3 movies a year. You know what's worse than 6 hours of Star Wars content a year in the form of movies? It's 18 to 24 hours of Star Wars content in the span of a year.
I don't draw that much of a distinction. I think the MCU can tell you that they would, if they release movies at that pace, they're not statements. They're not events. They become disposable because they don't. If you're if let's give them the amazing benefit of the doubt that's not real. Say they plan the MCU story arcs like 12 movies ahead, which there's no chance that they do. Even if like they may not know what the 10th one down the line is, but they know it will be something. So each note, it can only have so much going on for it. It's like what you're saying about Kenobi, how like you can't really do anything transformative because it's a piece sandwiched in between a chronology, right? So it's like it's like I think the only way outside of it is just totally changing the time period and committing to it for a while, because that's the problem with the MCU. They like it's whether a character dies or not is dependent on how long they want to work with that actor for how many more movies. It's nothing to do with the story. So I think that if you would have got those movies every year, you would be feeling the same way.
No, exactly. But that's the thing. I'm trying to make though is that like my worst fear was 3 movies a year. Instead of that, instead of 3 2-hour movies, I'm getting 3 6-hour series.
Yeah, with more boring stuff in it and lower budgets. Yeah,
Exactly, and it's as if Lucas again, like we mentioned this at the very beginning. Bob Iger's thing was, oh, maybe too much, too fast, too soon, and they are literally doing the opposite. They're doing just that. They are literally just. It's like, yeah, like it wasn't the fact that like we maybe did a little too much. Maybe we didn't let the stuff breathe. Maybe we didn't make it too exciting. No, it was all Aaron Reich. Solely all Ehrenreich, man. Like poor old Ehrenreich. Like he's being pulled off the LA Lakers like courtside seats with Jack Nicholson and really being thrown under the next bus that comes by.
Isn't it amazing? It's like you imagine being Alden Ehrenreich today. It's like oh, they look at this Vanity Fair article. They're promoting the new Kenobi show. It's like, hey, what did I do? What do you like, that was like 4 years ago.
Exactly.
Come on, man. Why is this like the main quote from this Kathleen Kennedy interview right before Kenobi comes out?
You know what the sad thing is? I wouldn't be surprised if Lucasfilm somehow works him into like Andor season 2. Like, he's gonna show up again at some point.
But also, how can they say that when it's like, isn't the Lando show still a real thing? And like recently, like Donald Glover like had an interview where they asked him about it, and he's like, I don't know, I can't say anything about that. So he like strongly implied that he's the lead.
Exactly.
So it's like, how can you say we can't recast key characters while you're literally working on that?
I think to bring this back to a Cinemoddities tenet, it's that nothing matters. And that like we can't trust, and the only thing we can trust is that we can't trust anything. I think it boils down to just Lucasfilm, the industry says and does whatever it wants in the moment. It doesn't matter. Like even like and Chris, I'm much more of a theme park aficionado than you are, but I imagine the Marvel film, The Eternals, blipped on your radar as a thing, right?
That is the extent of it.
Okay, you are aware it's a thing that exists.
I think my only thought was ever, hey, that's weird that Angelina Jolie is in the MCU. Yes. And then I never thought about it again.
So just real quick to show you how all this stuff folds into each other, regardless if it's successful or not. In the Eternals, it's a very strange movie. But probably one of the aspects you would like is that there are Celestials, and they're these really weird Jack Kirby looking creatures. Like they are pillars of the universe. And one of them is like they're pretty much the villains of the film. And I think you're aware, Chris, like the Eternals was unsuccessful under the guise of a Marvel film.
Okay.
Yeah, but just opened at Epcot in Walt Disney World in Florida has been the Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind ride. And guess who the villain of the ride is? It's a Celestial from, like, not specifically from Eternals, but considering like Celestials were a the largest thing that they've ever been in Marvel-wise, that's what Disney and all these brands do. If something is unsuccessful, it just gets folded into something that is successful until its image is rehabilitated. Like, it's going to happen with all of this. Like, whether it be, oh God, Alden Ehrenreich in Andor season 2, a Celestial in a Guardians of the Galaxy Disney ride, or Hot Toys making roughly $2,000 to $3,000 in MSRP of figures for a film that 20 years ago was considered the worst thing to ever grace humanity. I think the thing is that like all of this stuff eventually rehabilitates itself. I think
It's just like, but it's like, why? So like, this is like, this is a question that I'm sure marketing professionals have the answer to, or whether they know why it happens or not. They just know that it does, and that's why they behave in this way. But it's just shocking to me. It's like, so you're talking about this like sort of like alien villain or whatever they're reusing. It's like, why is that a better call than just making a new character? Like, there's obviously data to suggest that that's the case. So like, basically, what is wrong with human beings is my question to you. that they
I
would rather see something familiar that they didn't like than something new.
I think it boils down to, I don't know if again, like whether it be again marketing or consumer behavior. I think it comes down to just like it's the idea of you are supposed to like this thing. If you didn't take it the first time, we're just going to put some ketchup on it and you're going to take it again. It's like putting like wrapping the pill in bologna for a
But
dog.
but but what is the motivation behind such defense, rather than just moving on to a new thing?
I hubris. Like we're gonna go more into psychology right now, but I
Yeah,
think it's
I
hubris,
guess.
ego.
But but I mean, whatever that motivating force is, it is literally the cause of all of my annoyance with Star Wars. So
Okay.
I would like to know more, but yeah, I don't know.
All
It's
right. Okay, because like I said, because we've already been talking for like 90 minutes, Chris. We're probably boring the listener at home, but like,
yeah.
I don't know how much longer this conversation is going to go. But I have one question I want. Like, by the time next time I talk to you in any sort of recording capacity, you will be back from Celebration. There's something I want. You're gonna be hanging around a lot of people in the know, a lot of just the gossip. There's one question I have for you that I want you to have an answer for when you come back to Knights of Vader. Okay.
Oh geez.
Okay. And I think you have no idea where I'm going to go at right now. But the moment I tell you the question, you're going to be like, yeah, I should have figured this.
All right.
Why isn't there more Rise of Skywalker Palpatine merchandise?
Oh my.
I want you to come back with a very specific answer for me. And I don't care which version of the character, whether it's oh god, the Animus Palpatine or if it's Crimson Robe Palpatine. I
Okay.
want you to find out as much about that because I want a Hot Toys Palpatine figure from Rise of Skywalker.
You know what? That might be the most. That might be the most likely uh, episode 9 Palpatine product you are to get. Like, that might actually happen, because at the end of the day, it's some tailoring work and a new head for Hot Toys, so it could happen. But I mean, it's been a while since we recorded, so I'd be remiss if I didn't mention to the listeners, on the subject of episode 9 Palpatine, that I did pay for an Ian McDermott autograph at this ICC con that I went to. So I got in. I was there with the Ontario Collectors Alliance, which is as nerdy as it sounds. It's like Ontario Vintage Star Wars Collectors Group. So we had a club table there. So we had badges that were better than VIP. So we got in real early. I signed up for my Ian McDermott autograph, and I walked up there and I presented him a photo of him getting his makeup done from episode 9, and I asked him to sign "Somehow I Returned." And I said, he said, "Somehow I returned," and I said, "I think that would be very funny." And he said, "I also think that would be very funny," and he signed it. So I mean, like, on some level, he is aware that there is extreme silliness about his return, and like on something about that mildly resonated with him, and he had a very small chuckle while he signed it. So he's not he's not unaware of the funniness about it. You know what I mean? He's not living in a fantasy.
No. I can't imagine Ian McDermott is nothing but a good sport about this, about any of it. Oh my god, Chris, like Chris, you've probably seen it before, like on YouTube. Like they have like those people who do like, oh god, like it's the 2-3 hour long retrospectives on some very very niche topic. And like I look at this and I'm like, I love that. I love deep dives. Like I've said it numerous times on Cinemoddities. There's like a 3.5 hour long Blade Runner documentary. I hate the movie Blade Runner. I love the documentary because just how like into the nitty gritty it gets, I kind of like my goal in life is I just want to write the behind the scenes book on the Rise of Skywalker. Like I just like whether it be J.J. Abrams, Colin Madman Trevorrow, like I just want to know what happened to that movie. I just like because even this real quick, this is probably the conversation for another day, but I've been going through some Rise of Skywalker marketing, and there's so many lines of dialogue that either aren't in the finished film or were slightly tweaked in post production. And this goes to another contemporary Star Wars story. Apparently, I didn't know this. Maybe it's something that's been talked about like in the fan community for a while. But apparently, like all the dialogue in Attack of the Clones had to be ADR'd.
Well, I mean, that doesn't really surprise me. Basically, all the dialogue in the entire original trilogy is ADR'd as well.
Is it?
Almost everything.
Okay. Because the story is for Attack of the Clones, I guess the cameras that Lucas was using at the time, like for very primitive digital photography, were like so loud they couldn't record like properly on set audio. It's just one of those things where I get like any sort of movie production, there's like countless stories. But like maybe I'm just kind of like, again, it's that phenomenon of going into the woods and every single twig you hear snap is Bigfoot. Maybe I'm just looking for things, but like that's just a film that like I've said it numerous times, but like I would kill for that shooting script. I would kill for the script they went into principal photography with, even if there was like literally like a couple of words on a cocktail napkin that JJ used that morning for his coffee.
Yeah, well, I think you know, if and on the subject of your goal of writing that the behind the scenes book, you know, you could do something because there are people involved with that who do like talking about it, who they were in positions where they would have known things, and they're reasonably accessible people. It's just, you know, like getting them to sort of comment on stuff and put their name behind it while they're still working is going to be is the tricky part
I
there.
have to
But
wait 20 to 25 years is what you're saying. When these people are
well,
like are
I mean,
clearly like in their like retirement, like sunset phase.
I mean, maybe 10, but maybe 10, but um, I think that I think some of that stuff will start to come out because you know, as even though it's the wrong message that the reason Solo failed is because of Alden Ehrenreich, it's healthy to admit that you made mistakes. It's the wrong mistake that she's admitting to, but it's more than we usually get from them, you know. So like maybe that's sort of like it's kind of like how the behind the scenes books, like the Rinsler ones, are like real stuff is in those stories, and like the new ones are like a lot fluffier because like they're more it's stuff that happened recently with people who are still in big time in the industry. So it's like it's a sanitized making of sequel trilogy versus what Rinsler was doing. I think there was even an abandoned making of Force Awakens
Yeah.
that he was involved in. That was,
That's what,
yeah,
yeah,
right.
I remember
There was
that.
a real one that got canceled. Yeah. so
Well, yeah,
so you
our claim to
yeah.
again, it's funny. This was back during Star Wars junk days. We're like, oh god, he got J.W. Rinsler to appear on the podcast, and that was while he was doing his blog. And weirdly, we thought at the time that maybe we were the impetus for that, like why he got canceled, because like the same, like it was like the day before we were supposed to start recording, he canceled, and that was the same day he deleted the blog, where he was like chronicling like everything that went wrong with like the prequel trilogy. Yeah, like we know, like, because yeah, apparently from what I've read, that like J.W. Rinsler presented a manuscript to them for The Force Awakens. Like it's there, like blemishes and all, and it's sitting on a shelf somewhere. Like obviously it doesn't exist for The Last Jedi and anything else, but like there at least is a oh god, what would you, not official documentation, but at least it was officially sanctioned, maybe.
Right. So
Which can't be said for any of the other subsequent projects.
yeah, and it was too real for them. So they had to go another route.
That's the
It was too
truth. Like that's literally been the
yeah.
story, is that like they didn't like the fact that like he was so kind of just matter of fact about things, and that's when they shut it down. But like I think it's, oh god, what's his name? Oh god, he has one of those names. Zack. He's a concept artist, and I know because he does the foreword for a lot of these books. And I think that's how he's kind of commented on it over the years. Like, it was a little too real, and Lucasfilm deemed it too distracting from the property that was going to launch for it to be released.
You know what though? Looking back, it can't be any more distracting than saying we definitely can't recast key characters. Like, that's just, you know what I mean? Like, that's a weirder
That's
thing to say than almost
that's how
anything
it
that's in that
begins.
book.
That's the first sentence of the book.
Yeah. Can you imagine that? That's why we're dusting off all the OT actors, because we just couldn't possibly
Not
recast
even
them.
well, what do you okay? And I guess I don't want, like I said, we don't want this to go on forever. But like, what do you think
Yeah.
of that? Marvel Disney has signed an agreement with Stan Lee's estate to use his likeness indefinitely in every piece of media imaginable.
I think that that agreement on paper was a foregone conclusion that it would happen. I don't know if that'll actually be executed, but I feel like the way those companies work, that agreement was going to be proposed and agreed to based on the monetary values involved, whether they end up actually putting him in those movies or not.
But at what point did this become unsustainable? Like, you remember what was it, a year or two ago, they were going to do the James Dean movie with like Ultron James Dean. Everyone's just like, isn't this a little icky? Like, it's one thing when it's Tarkin for like 5 minutes, but to actually have a movie star and actor that's been dead now for how many decades? Like, I guess this question is, now that we have Ultron, Luke Skywalker, is Luke Skywalker gonna live forever as a character? Is he gonna be like Chewbacca?
I don't think I don't think that those moments have the, I mean, and this is a writing problem, not it's not a technology problem. It's like they didn't give him something that was an important beat for his character. So it's like it's a forgettable, like I know that some people it seem to have changed their lives. It's a forgettable sort of interaction with Ultron, Luke Skywalker, and Grogu, because it's not to do with the Skywalker saga. In fact, it is a distraction from the Skywalker saga, given where it lands canonically, because it just brings up more questions than answers. And I don't think they're going to do that. I think maybe it'll be a while, but I think by the time they'd be comfortable doing it, the marketing cachet of Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker may have been diminished, because, you know, even in the current time period, those original trilogy fans are still spending. They're still their dollars still have value. They're you know they're approaching retirement age, but like those original fans are still on the market. And you know, in 20 years time, that's not really going to be the case. So I don't know if there's as much value in a leading man CGI Mark Hamill Luke Skywalker in 20 years as there is right now.
I don't know, Chris. That is a Mark Hamill Luke Skywalker is one of those larger than life characters. Like, give me five actors that play characters that are as, like, point to it and say this is like when you think, like, you say Mark Hamill, it's Luke Skywalker. Like Robert Downey Jr., Tony Stark. Like, it's like, I would imagine that clearly Disney, for Robert Downey Jr., has signed something to use his likeness indefinitely. Whether, let's just say tomorrow Robert Downey Jr., a meteor fell out of the sky and Monty Python anviled him. Like just say that. Like just think of that. I would imagine that for every single one of these actors for tentpole movies, I would imagine they are forced to do the Mark Hamill Ultron thing. So they have it at their disposal. Like, why do you think the Carrie Fisher Leia thing in Rise of Skywalker was able to be done so easily? Unless they kind of knew this was an insurance policy.
Well, a couple things. It wasn't done easily. It looks weird. It still looks weird. They didn't fix it.
They could have very easily written her out of the movie. Think about
They
it.
could have very easily written her some dialogue that wasn't like a clip of something she said in the other movie, but they didn't do that either. So that is the worst possible example. That was a hot mess. They should have just totally cut that out of the movie. But I don't know. Like maybe I feel like people sort of lose their, I don't know. People lose their infatuation with the actors to some degree. Maybe I never glommed onto to like casting choices in that way. But I remember like before the sequel trilogy really took off, like I would see Carrie Fisher at like Toronto comic conventions, like Fan Expo and stuff, and like I wasn't couple observations about that thinking back. Very, very short lines, and I never felt compelled to go up. Looking back on it now, with the godlike status the fan community has awarded her posthumously, that seems crazy, right? But vividly remember, this is probably 2013 or 14. There's maybe 10 people in line. It's like shit. It's like $60, and the fascination around Princess Leia was not at a fever pitch at that point. I could easily see the world getting back to that sort of status quo in not too long a period of time related to the sort of original trilogy cast. So just I don't think CGI Luke Skywalker ad infinitum is a foregone conclusion. I just don't know if it'll be that compelling to people.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I at least I hope not. I mean, yeah.
Okay. So I guess just finally wrapping up the Vanity Fair piece. It looks like another weird thing about Lucasfilm when it comes to like just detailing stuff. Mandalorian season 3 is either 2022 or 2023. I kind of like they kind of give a 2-year span, as in, yeah, it'll be one of these. I found that amusing.
It's like if people feel this new show, it'll be sooner. If people get annoyed, we might space it out a little bit. That's probably what it comes down to.
And then even Ahsoka, because Ahsoka is just now starting principal photography, and that I would assume the absolute earliest. Oh God, this time next year, the absolute earliest.
Yeah, but it's still gonna be a lot. Like you're gonna have like inside a year, you're gonna have Obi-Wan, Mandalorian season 3. I mean, I am no longer interested in the Bad Batch, but you'll have that season 2 as well. Like,
Are we sure? Because like, there's not even been talk about that.
I think it's just a marketing choice that it'd be a distraction prior to Obi-Wan, but I'm sure there's going to be something about the Bad Batch season 2 at Celebration.
What about Tales of the Jedi? Wasn't that supposed to be something that's like what? It's supposed to be little like shorts.
I didn't like maybe I'm like behind on the news, but I didn't even realize that had been officially announced
It
in any
hasn't
capacity.
been. Like it's one of those things where like there was some like Lucasfilm party favor at like Christmas time,
Right.
and then like it's apparently supposed to be like an animated short series. Like I Visions level, I'm guessing, like in the sense of like just like in how concise time wise it's supposed to be. I don't know. Like it's weird.
Can you imagine if that's like actually sort of uses the comics as a source material and has like Eula Keldroma and Exar Kun, like I'll be pretty happy with that. Somehow I think it is going to be a name only Tales of the Jedi.
Oh, 100%. Like again, marketing for nostalgia. But no, that's
like yeah.
I know that's the thing. It's weird to think of that though, and I get it. Like they want, and this is where it comes back to the Vanity Fair thing of like Lucasfilm doing this. If they're not just simply doing it out of some misplaced sense of tradition, it's that they want people to view the live action TV shows as the equivalent of a movie. And clearly their market research is saying that people do not view them at that same level.
Right. And well, I mean, I think that's almost entirely to blame on the Book of Boba Fett. But like literally it changed the tone, man. Like I took The Mandalorian more seriously before I saw the Book of Boba Fett. I did. Psychologically.
I don't know about that because there's no way the Book of Boba Fett did that much damage. There's no. I'm not saying that like it I don't know. I don't think Boba Fett was that potent.
It's like it is the dumbest live action Star Wars thing.
Is it? Is it really?
Yes.
Have you seen Attack of the Clones or The Rise of Skywalker?
I've seen Ewoks: The Battle for Endor.
And you really think Book of Boba Fett is cornier than that?
I think it's like there's something. it's relying on this sort of retrospective like look at the Ewoks movies, but they are more interesting. It's
I
just they're more interesting just in a production sense. The Book of Boba Fett is just like, you can give them the Ewoks thing, you can give them an excuse. It was made for $5 by Lucasfilm standards. It was made for TV, and when TV was a different thing. The Book of Boba Fett is just inexcusable in the current like context of like the world right now. It's just,
I don't know.
yeah,
I think
but
Book of Boba Fett is like on the same tier as like Stranger Things season 3. It's
yeah,
just
I would never
it's
watch that, but yeah,
okay.
I hear
There
what
you
you're saying.
go. Like I don't, Chris. There's also a point where we might have to come to realize that they're not making this stuff for us, and I don't
I
mean
just
that.
want them to make it for human beings who are adults. That's all I want to make it for. Like,
Have you seen the average human being that is an adult?
you're talking about the hot dog munchers again. I don't want
Exactly.
them to get
Have
angry
you
at
ever
us.
like have people ever thought about when they say like, "Oh, they're not making this content for us. Maybe it's not like an age maturity thing. It's for a cultural societal like angle."
Yeah, but it's like it's like when people say, "Oh, you're not the intended audience," they're not giving the intended audience a compliment. Like, they shouldn't
Exactly.
throw that argument out there. Like, that's, I
Have
don't
you
know.
seen what Netflix produces on a weekly basis? Like it's literally just garbage. Like forget about the hot dog. It's just like a boot with ketchup like smeared on the bottom of it. But yeah, the basically the overall point of this is that like who is this intended for? And that's a question I've been asking for years now on this podcast. Is that who is Disney making this content for? And I think the answer is everybody. And that is clearly the wrong way to go about making anything. Because if you try to make something that appeals to everyone, you eventually appeal to no one.
Yeah, well, I think that's what I mean. I think that's the way things are done these days, and that's just, you can see it across the board with movies and TV shows that this at this budget level. So it's probably an unfortunate reality of our current state of culture.
Huh, what a incredible time to be alive. Alrighty, Chris, with that being said, is there anything else when it comes to Vanity Fair, Celebration, Kenoba, that any predictions you want to make? Anything you before any of this? What do you think is gonna happen? It's gonna be a big week for Star Wars 7 days
I
from now.
think, yeah, I feel like they have to have at least one wild card announcement up their sleeve for Celebration. I think, I don't know what that is, but remember, we got the announcement of the most underwhelming series of all time at the end of a Mandalorian episode. So if they're going to do something like that, they're going to save some kind of announcement for Celebration, when, and because we have Celebration the week of Obi-Wan coming out. They have to have something planned, something interesting. I think the first two episodes of Kenobi, I'm sure, are going to play real smooth. Where it goes from there, I am both equally excited and terrified. So I'm excited for that. I'm going to be at Celebration. I'm leaving on the 24th, so I'll be there a little bit early. And like I said, I'm going to be doing some work on the collecting track. So if any listeners are going to Celebration and they want to say hi, you'll pretty much be able to find me at the collector's track stage anytime there's a collector's track panel going on. So that'd be cool if you want to come say hi. I'm going to be filming the panels up there. Yeah, I'm excited for Celebration. It's going to be fun.
Very cool. All right, so conclude this episode of the Knights of Vader, a Star Wars podcast. Check out the Facebook group, type Knights of Vader in the Facebook, and chances are you will find us there waiting for you. Thank you to An Inspiriority Complex for providing our theme song. Check out the show notes to hear more from them. If you want to hear more from me, please come listen to the Cinemoddities podcast. The latest episode was a film that neither Rob or I was participating in, but Chris was. 1998's Urban Legend. As somebody who was not involved with that recording at all, it is a hoot of an episode. So at the very least, I would imagine Chris would recommend to listen to that because it's a trip, man. That episode is a trip.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun hanging out with some of your other guest hosts over on Cinemoddities who I haven't had the chance to talk to before, and we got to talk about the very goofy uh, or slasher Urban Legend, which wouldn't exist if Scream didn't exist, and it's not a good movie.
Indeed. Alrighty, Chris, when you are not at Celebration and you're not on this podcast or on Cinemoddities, where can people find you?
You can find me at the Chris Porteous on Instagram, and also go ahead and follow KOV Podcast on Instagram as well while you're at it.
Oh, yeah. Lots of pictures on there, I'll bet, in the next few days. Alrighty, folks. Good night, but not goodbye. And as always, may the Force be with you.